Coming up on Network Africa, over 70 people killed in Mali following an artisanal mine collapse. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visits Angola, the last stop on his Africa tour. Plus, International Court of Justice to rule on South Africa's request for interim measures in Israel's genocide case. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Layo Olarinde. We begin in Mali, where officials have released the number of casualties from last week's mine collapse. More than 70 people are said to have died in the southwest region after an artisanal gold mine collapsed. Well, it's the latest disaster in a region prone to mining accidents. While it is not clear what caused the mine to collapse that occurred on Friday, the Ministry of Mines says that several miners had been killed in the Kabanga district in southwest Kulikoro region. The ministry says it deeply regretted the collapse and urged miners and communities in that area to always comply with safety requirements. In Ghana, 6 citizens, including 3 soldiers, have been sentenced to death by hanging for their involvement in a coup plot 3 years ago. The High Court in Accra found the 6 guilty of high treason and conspiracy to commit high treason. They were arrested in 2021 while testing weapons in the capital to allegedly topple the government. State prosecutors said the group had planned to organize protests and to topple President Nana Akufo-Addo's government ahead of the 2020 general elections. Well, this is the first treason trial in Ghana since 1966, when post-independence leader Kwame Nkrumah was overthrown. Well, joining us now is Kwado Onyako, the legal affairs correspondent with Joy News TV in Accra. Hello, Kwado. Thank you for joining us on the program. You were at the High Court during proceedings yesterday. Talk to us about how it all went down.
Well, so let me first talk to you about the prosecution's case, the case they put before the court. And the state prosecutors accuse these people who have now been convicted or sentenced to death by hanging that they belong to an association called Take Action Ghana and had planned to stage a series of demonstrations ostensibly to topple the government. In July 2019, the state prosecutors accused these people of contacting a blacksmith from Alavanyo, a suburb in the Volta region, to manufacture 22 explosives, 6 ammunition, and 5 pistols. The court also heard that the manufacturer charged their alleged accomplices 2,300 Ghana cedis as the cost of each pistol and 400 for each explosive. In fact, in September 2019, Dr. Malpalm, one of the convicts who is now deceased, and one Kafi were arrested after test firing at the Teshi military shooting range. So the Attorney General, the one that led the prosecution, told the court that a search conducted on the premises of the Citadel Hospital revealed 6 unregistered pistols, 1 registered pistol, 22 explosives, 3 grenades, 63 rounds of ammunition, 2 empty AK-47 magazines, and other machines used in manufacturing weapons. So it was a 3-member panel presided over by Justice Ifeasewa Asaribuchi, and then they came to the conclusion that for 3 of them, the prosecution could not make its case, and so they had to acquit and discharge them. For the 6 of them, including the one that is deceased, they found, they could link them to the crime of high treason. And the punishment in Ghana is that if you want to topple the government, then it means that you have to be sentenced by hanging. And so these were the words of the presiding judge, that you are hereby sentenced to death by hanging by your neck. You struggle to die, and where you will be buried will be decided by the president of the republic. And so the state called 13 witnesses, including 7 soldiers. The 7 soldiers among them were 13 witnesses, including Colonel Isaac Amponsa. And Colonel Amponsa is the Director and Operational Intelligence and Defense Intelligence Unit of the Ghana Armed Forces. And so he was the first prosecution. Now, after the court's decision, there have been reactions from both sides. whilst the Attorney General, the prosecution, said that this is indeed victory for democracy, the defense counsel, one of the lawyers whose client was acquitted and discharged, said that he is very happy because he knew that from the outset, the client was not culpable in what he was charged with, and so he was happy. But the other lawyers whose clients have now been convicted and sentenced to death by hanging say that the state or the judge or the court could not really consider the evidence put before them, all of the evidence in totality before them, and so it wasn't fair, and that they will be appealing this case at the apex court of. And so that is how it went down. After the court decision, you saw jubilation. In fact, it was a cocktail of reaction. While some were very happy, others were unhappy because a lot of family members besieged the court premises ostensibly to throw or lend their support to their family members or relatives who were involved in this.
All right, then, Kwado, we'll wait and see, the defense counsel of those who have been convicted, saying they will appeal that conviction. So we'll wait and see how that goes. But thank you so much, Kwado Nyako, the legal affairs correspondent with Joy News TV.
All right, thank you.
The U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, is in Angola, and he has held a joint press conference in Rwanda with the foreign minister of the country, Tete Antonio. Well, the press conference follows bilateral talks of economic and strategic partnership, as well as investments, climate, food and health security in the region. Mr. Blinken arrived Angola on Wednesday evening, the last stop of his four-nation Africa tour. Well, earlier in the week, he visited Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire and Nigeria as part of U.S.'s efforts to strengthen relations with the continent. The United States established diplomatic relations with Angola back in 1993, and the two countries have since worked together to address the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Saudi Arabia acknowledges the positive investment atmosphere in South Africa, but emphasizes the need for enhancing logistics and energy supply. Well, South Africa aims to attract investment from Saudi Arabia, specifically to help with the power crisis. Well, this was made known at the Saudi Arabia-South Africa Business Council, which was established by Business Unity South Africa and the Saudi Chambers of Commerce. The council was created to improve two-way trade and investment relations between South Africa and the Middle Eastern economies. Well, our South African correspondent, Innocent Samosa, brings this report.
Saudi Arabia is South Africa's second largest trading partner in the Middle East and the largest source of imports from the region. Chairman of South Africa Saudi Business Council, Dr. Hisham Al-Amoidi, views South Africa as the gateway to Africa.
We're open for any new any ideas, any opportunities. As you know, Saudi Arabia now it's leading the GCC area. It's the biggest, in size, in population, and everything. You look at Saudi Arabia that it's the hub of the GCC area. We look at South Africa that it's the gateway for the Africa countries. So we have a mutual interest, both of us. It's a win-win situation. We will have a website for this South African Business Council that will have all the opportunities.
However, the business visa remains a challenge.
We'll continue to increase connectivity where we can. The direct flight, the tourism visa, now that's resolved. But my Saudi colleagues tell me there's still issues around business visas and work permits potentially. So we need to cover those.
Meanwhile, the business sector is optimistic about this partnership.
I think it sends a very positive message for and on behalf of business. It's certainly positive in terms of building investor confidence, and we all know that South Africa's investor confidence has been somewhat dented with the energy crisis, infrastructure, logistics, supply chain. So when you have these type of collaborations and some initial successes, it does help to restore confidence building.
South Africa is facing challenges with its oil refinery. I'm told that ongoing discussions between Saudi Arabia and South Africa are addressing this issue. Well, since 2010, bilateral investment amount to 1.6 billion US dollars between the two countries. Saudi Arabia, the biggest economy in the Middle East, is keen on industrializing its economy. On the other hand, the South African government is looking at ways to enhance its economic ties with Saudi Arabia. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
The managing director of Reputation First, Shepo Masheba, says South Africa's energy insecurity presents the biggest risk to the ruling ANC's prospects of winning this year's election. While Africa's most industrialized economy has battled a 15-year power crisis that's left the nation without electricity for up to 12 hours a day. Mr. Masheba adds that the country's crippled economy will be top on the minds of voters when they head to a general election later this year, which marks the third decade that the ANC has been in power. Masheba was speaking to the business desk.
Challenges that will affect the elections and how people participate in those elections. One of those is of course the energy crisis. The fact that more often than ever we are in the dark for the longest of time during any given year, and the energy sector is unpredictable. So we never know whether we're going to have energy for a sustained period. So you can't plan. And in business, investors need to plan, but also the lack of electricity provision affects poor people, meaning that they can't cook, they cannot perform basic necessities, and that children actually go to school without warm water. And that's at the poverty and realistic level across South Africa, and so that will impact the ANC. But additionally, there are a few other challenges, one of which include the high levels of youth unemployment, where so many young people wake up. In fact, someone from Statistics South Africa said there are many young people who wake up every day and do absolutely nothing, meaning that they are not in education, they are not in training, and they are not in employment, and they are also not looking for employment because they've lost hope. And so that will be a bigger challenge for the ANC.
The International Court of Justice is set to deliver its ruling on whether to enact provisional measures to temporarily suspend Israel's military campaign in Gaza. The measures would function as a kind of restraining order to stop the dispute from escalating while the full case progresses through the court, which could take years. And while the court's rulings are final and binding in practice, it has no way of enforcing them. South Africa filed the case against Israel at the ICJ, claiming it is committing genocide against Palestinians in Gaza and failing to prevent and punish genocide in violation of its obligations under the Genocide Convention. Israel has rejected the accusations, calling them false and grossly distorted, but the ruling will take place on Friday. In the meantime, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi is accusing Israel of preventing aid deliveries to Gaza in his address at the police academy in Cairo. He was speaking during the annual ceremony marking the 72nd anniversary of Police Day and the 13th anniversary of the January 25th revolution. President el-Sisi says before the war, 600 trucks used to enter the Gaza Strip from Egypt daily, but now, at most, only 200 to 220 trucks enter the Strip. He also denied reports of Egypt being the root cause of the problem, saying this is untrue. According to him, the Rafah border crossing is open 24/7 from the Egyptian side, and delays are mainly due to procedures, he says, conducted by Israel on the other side of the border. Police Day in Egypt marks the resistance of Egyptian police against British occupation forces in Ismailia in 1952, highlighting the historical significance of the event. Still ahead on the program. A network of researchers from West Africa gathered to evaluate work done on major infectious diseases plaguing the continent. More details after the break. Please join us again. Welcome back to the program. President Paul Kagame of Rwanda says his country cannot afford to treat the security situation on its borders with the Democratic Republic of Congo and Burundi without utmost urgency, as the security of the people of Rwanda is strategic to ensuring that the horrors of the past do not reoccur. The president, who addressed the national dialogue in Kigali, affirms that the progress made by the country since the genocide was anchored on the massive investments in security of lives and property. Hence, his government will redouble efforts to continue to safeguard the country. Our correspondent, Dele Omoyeni, reports.
For the past 19 years, Rwanda has held a national dialogue themed Umushikano, which means to discourse with all openness and sincerity. This year's edition, however, coincides with the 30th anniversary of a dark past, the 1994 genocide that claimed over 1 million lives.
Telling them now, much better come back.
The president has a message for young people of the country.
The whole world is struggling. So, including those who give lessons, they're really struggling. And when they are struggling, and they're telling you to do certain things they are struggling to achieve, then they start telling you, yeah, but that is the beauty of democracy. Yeah, so why is it not the beauty of democracy when I'm struggling?
He also uses the platform to express his commitment to tackling growing security challenges in the region.
When it comes to defending this country that has suffered for so long and nobody came to help, I don't need permission from anybody. To do what we have to do to protect ourselves.
Rwanda has also taken a big step in a 30% affirmative action to give women a place in the decision-making process.
All categories of the citizens are represented in our parliament. We have different political parties. For the time being, all 11 political parties duly registered in our countries have their representation in our parliament, the Chamber of Deputies. We have special seats for women. We have seats for youth, and we have seats for people with disabilities. In all action we are taking, we have to take into account the interests of all categories of the citizens we are representing.
For the past 2 days, the government and the people of Rwanda have come together at the 19th National Dialogue to deliberate on the past in view of the 30th anniversary of the Rwandan genocide and to chart a way forward for the future. It is hoped that this dialogue will indeed ensure that the past does not repeat itself, but of course the country goes to greater heights. From the Kigali Convention Center, Dele Omoyeni, Channels Television News.
Namibia's President Hage will be flying to the U.S. to receive what is termed specialized medical treatment for cancer. This news from his office comes less than a week after it revealed that medical tests showed he had cancerous cells. The 82-year-old is expected to receive novel therapy in the U.S. for a week before returning to continue with his treatment in Namibia. Concerns about his health have been growing in the country, with reports saying that he admitted last year that he had become frail. Vice President Angola Mumba is expected to take up the reins and be acting president during his absence, but Mr. Geingob is due to step down at the end of his 2 terms later this year. The country is due to hold presidential and parliamentary elections in November. To health matters now, Cameroon continues its nationwide vaccination against malaria after being the first country to roll out such routine program. Dozens of women with children have been attending the Tiko District Hospital to have the shot and become the first patients to do so outside the malaria vaccine pilot program that was carried out in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi. According to media reports, the vaccine, called RTSS, will be rolled out at scale across the continent after a successful pilot phase. The vaccination, which is being implemented as an additional tool for malaria control, will specifically target children. According to the World Health Organization, malaria claims more than 600,000 lives a year in Africa.
Vaccination against malaria to children from 6 months to 24 months is ongoing. So the prevalence of the malaria in our country is too high, especially for children from 0 to 5 years. Cause death about 5,000 deaths in our country. Is too much, it's too high, the prevalence. I think that this vaccine against malaria is very, very welcome to our population.
Actually, today we are working on the malaria vaccine. We are supposed to vaccinate the first babies delivered in July 2023 today. So that's why we are here at the IWC.
Without a doubt, malaria, HIV, AIDS, and tuberculosis are among the major infectious diseases in Africa. That's why some countries have come together to form the West African Network for Tuberculosis, AIDS, and Malaria, WANETAM, with a core focus on capacity building, among other things. Well, WANETAM is holding its annual retreat to take stock of its third project since inception. Our correspondent, Mary Alale Yusuf, reports.
Representatives of West African nations, which make up WANETAM, are here in this hall, along with partners from France, Germany, Portugal, and the UK.
Our successes as well as we should.
Several teams have been busy with various work packages, and it is time to evaluate their progress. But first, a word of welcome from the host institution, the Nigerian Institute of Medical Research, NIMR, and the coordinator of WANETAM.
NIMR has benefited tremendously from the network through training, exchange program, and technical assistance.
This network, as mentioned already, has grown, and now to the EDCTP3 bring 25 institutions from 12 West African countries and 5 partners from European countries.
Various representatives of WANETAM present their work package findings on the diseases they have been studying.
The WANETAM TB network focuses on having sort of like integrated training, whereby the medical, nursing, and allied medical staff of national public health laboratories, academic institutions within West Africa undergo intense training, including clinical and laboratory personnel from all the institutions, through which we essentially promote research capacity strengthening within the national health system.
We've been able to implement the anti-malaria surveillance workshop in the Gambia. So they were trained on next generation sequencing, particularly focused on using the nanopore devices for doing molecular surveillance of malaria parasites that people are able to implement in places where they don't have MI6 and high throughput sequences.
There are some unseen heroes behind the malaria vaccine who are still working to implement and assess its impact.
I was the principal investigator of the clinical trial in phase 2 that investigated this new vaccine that have been produced by the University of Oxford in the UK. And we reported 77% of efficacy over 1 year, and these data were published in the Lancet.
The coordinator of the external steering group scores WANETAM high, but believes West Africa has the capacity for more impact.
It appears that individual scientists, bright scientists in Nigeria, want to work alone. We've moved beyond that. they should come together, identify what are the top issues in Nigeria that we need to deal with, that the government is grappling with, so that all efforts are focused on that, and people are coming together, look at every dimension of the disease that the government will need or the policymaker will need when they are taking decisions.
During this 3-day retreat, the network will examine more work package findings and decide what must be done to close the gaps and improve on work already done for a West Africa free of tuberculosis, AIDS, and malaria. Mary Alale Yusuf, Channels Television News.
And that's it on the program today. Thank you for watching. I'm Layo Olarinde.